Hello, hello, Elizabeth. Hello. Let me check. Hello, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Hello.
So just waiting for the participants. Sometimes they are not on time. Just wait. I will look in the WhatsApp to send them a message.
Hold on a sec. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Georg, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right, hold on a sec. You can hear me. I can't hear you. Let me change my microphone.
Okay.
How about now?
It's better now, but
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, hello. Just waiting for the participants. Hopefully they will come and join. Sometimes there are more people there, sometimes less. But let's take a look. No? So I'm happy that you found the time also to do it quite spontaneously today. And happy to meet you. And yeah, so we have different programs of a student program. So now somebody is joining, but let's wait. So we have different programs like the International Business Students Program, and we have participants from Germany inside. I think most of them have a lecture today. Then we have some from India, from Bahamas, Slovenia, Africa. So but it is always recorded. And the point is that most of the things they need to do inside the learning platform, something like answering a text with a reflection question, doing some casework. So for them, it's more important to be inside the learning platform. And inside the learning platform, they are doing different competencies. So we are now in week number 5, but the last time we had a lot of different presentations, also on building trust, negotiation, cross-cultural awareness, and I think 7 or 8 groups, or no, 9 groups. 7 of them presented, and 2 are still left. Perhaps we will do them next week. But today we have a session, a little bit of session of self-management and mindfulness. And so this is a program in the next week. So in the next week, we will have Conjo Vogel. She's not in our WhatsApp group, Elizabeth. She is at Southern California, and she's also part of this Globe project. The week after, we will discuss with Hans Both. It is a friend. He's working in procurement. And he will also tell a little bit about his career or global career. But I will also mention what competences are relevant, for example, in marketing, in finance, in supply chain, and in more others, in human resources. The week after, I have 3 people presenting the topic of global mobility, global assignments. It will be Rodrigo Millo at University of Vaasa. It will be a German professor from Munich, and it will be a practitioner from Berlin. So they will talk about global mobility, global assignments. The week after is Learning Mindset by Steve Terrell. He's also he's in Florida, and he has a good approach for global leaders and how to take how to develop this learning mindset, growth mindset, which is quite relevant also for global mindset development. So he has written an excellent book and also a toolbox of how to learn from experience. I don't know if you have heard from Steve Terrell. Yeah. So this is a little bit the the agenda for the next weeks. So we have some interesting lectures, and now we also have some students, perhaps more students will join later, I don't know. But now there is also Roots and Ritu and Rachid, those three from India. Yeah, so Ruth, tell me something about your case study, what you are doing in the learning platform.
Oh, shit.
Hello?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. We are learning about China.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about the case study, and you will do it today and to submit it. So the point is, we have also for Elizabeth, we have in the platform individual learnings. So they will receive a couple of text and videos. Each of them, they have a reflection question. They need to submit it with a text, and then they have this group work. And now some of them are doing the group work, and hopefully in the next week they will speed up a little bit, because they have 11 more competences to do, but we reduce the material. So it's always that there's learning content, that there is an individual learning according to the competence level, but then they have the possibility to interact with a case study. Now, or interaction here via this presentation, weekly presentation on Thursdays. And the same will be for the executive program starting next Friday. So they will receive 12 different competencies. I think 12 different lectures. Some of them might be similar by the wording, but also with a little bit more practitioner oriented. I mean, here we also try to do it, but also giving some theoretical background for the students in order to read something, to prepare something, and also to get to know what is relevant in their global career to do, and to reflect their own mindset, and also to be aware of their cross-cultural differences. So this we are trying with in the last week with the interaction groups here. So we had a longer session, and also within the case studies, which they need to do in the learning platform, they will always get different people because they are self-selecting what case they would like to do. So it could be a person from Bahamas or Germany or India together. I mean, it could also be only Indian in one group, but because people are self-selecting, and then they are doing this group work. So this a little bit as a background. Okay, yeah, perhaps you can shortly introduce yourself. So it is going to be recorded for the other students who are missing today. I mean, the time is sometimes suitable for some not, but it is always recorded, that you get to know that if you might not say some specific words, Elizabeth, then perhaps don't mention it. And yeah, okay, yeah, thank you very much. And that it was also spontaneous. I mean, I've read your paper 3 years ago, I think, and I liked it. I also included it in one of my publications, the newer ones, but this is what we can talk in an extra time. But I liked it, and perhaps you can say something about your experience with clients, or also, I mean, you also work at a university, I think, or you have your own institute. Perhaps you can say something about yourself in the beginning. So wait a second.
Do you want me to do that now?
Yes, please. So short introduction of your person, and why are you interested in this mindfulness, in this cross-cultural area? Perhaps you can give a little bit of background from your person.
Sure. I actually quickly put together some PowerPoints. Okay. Could you allow me to share? Yes. They're just now, visual.
Yeah, now it works, I think.
Okay, great. Can you see that, everyone?
Yes.
Let me close my other applications here. Yeah, so let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and I just lost you. Hold on a second. I like to know with whom I'm speaking. Hello, Professor Ruby, and hello to Rashid, Ritu, and Ruth. I'd love to learn a little more about you all. But first, let me just share a little bit about me and tell you what I have been doing for the last 20 plus years.
Okay.
And I just put together a bunch of slides. I'm not going to go through all of these, so stop
Okay.
me. Stop, please just stop me. Because I can get talking for a long time. But yeah, I'm Elizabeth Tuleja. I am a business professor and also a certified associate coach. And I have been working 20 plus years in the field of intercultural management as an academic. I think I'm just going to use the simple screen here. As an academic, as a consultant, and I've lived abroad. I've lived in Mexico, Peru, Hong Kong, China. My area of expertise has moved from Latin American studies to Chinese. So I'm a China expert, and I unfortunately am not in China right now because 2 years ago during the pandemic, I came back to check on my elderly mother and disabled sister, and haven't been let back into China. The world has changed. So I now have my own institute called the Intercultural Leader Institute. You're welcome to go and take a look at it. And what I am doing, I have worked for over 20 years in the field of business education, in business communication, talking about writing and speaking and cross-cultural communication. I've worked with undergrads, MBAs, executive MBAs at the Wharton School. I was a professor there for 8 years, at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, at the Mendoza School of Business, at the University of Notre Dame in the US, and at Sichuan University and Shanghai International Studies Universities in China. So I've worked with professionals all over the world. And one of the things that I feel is extremely important is not just being good at your functional skills. You know, as I prepare MBA students, and I work with EMBA students who've had a lot of experience, maybe not necessarily global because of just the situation here in the US. Some people are very global, but many people are not. So my goal has been to help people expand their horizon. And I think you all know this, and Professor, please stop me at any moment.
Yeah.
I would just like to share a couple of my insights. You know, business analytics, that's a real hot topic, a sexy topic. When I left the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza School of Business to go as a Fulbright scholar to China a few years back, oh, this was a sexy topic, business analytics. And they created new majors, data analysis, big data. You know, the focus on financial analysis. You need to know how to analyze the finances of a company, investment banking, all of the complicated things. My students would do cases on the IFRS. What should we do as a global economy? And when you think about artificial intelligence, basically trying to get robots, machines, computers to facilitate things that perhaps humans don't need to do. So with all of the technology, with all of the trade, with all of the immigration, with all of everything that goes into globalization, the functional skills are critical. But I think what's even more critical is being able to have those emotional intelligence, the EQ, and the cultural intelligence, because, if we think about, the 8 billion people in our world, and this morning I just jumped onto the world population counter, and this is today's population. It depends on what today is, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.
But when you think about, you're going to be hired by an organization because you possess those functional skills, whether it be marketing, accounting, economics, finances, whatever. However, we know that the world has become complex, and COVID has changed the way that we do business and we interact in society in so many ways. When we think about languages, many of us speak multiple languages. With the language comes the culture, and we think about culture. It's not just our enjoyment of travel or learning a different language. It's all of the values, the attitudes, the beliefs that we don't see, that we don't understand, even if we live in Europe or are someone like a professor who is German and living in Mexico and teaching, and all of your other background to make you a multicultural person. There is so much complexity, and I'll make it even more complex. I don't know how big you can see, but when you think about everything that goes into who we are as individuals, we may not identify as a German national or a US American national. We have so many different aspects of who we are in terms of our social class, our education, our geographic regions, etc. And all of that.
Elizabeth, this is an excellent chart here. What you did here, no? with one more, no? This one. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about different regions where you believe some aspects might be more relevant? Like, for example, in Asia, it's good to connect, or so you mentioned the functional skills, but you also mentioned something about perhaps competencies, or so which skills are more relevant in different areas of the world. So when you take this chart that you said, okay, the family is more relevant in Latin America or in India or in China. So from your personal experience, perhaps perhaps you can mention something for the students that you also need to learn different skills or competencies in different regions, which are more important than perhaps or less important in others.
Yeah, that's a great point, Professor. Thanks for bringing that up. I would say, for example, you bring up family, and I've lived both in Latin America and in Asia, and everywhere in the world, family is important. In the US, family is important, but we attach different values, different attitudes, different beliefs towards the family. For example, when you are a child in the US, probably your grandparents live in a different house, perhaps in a different town, perhaps in a different city or even province or state, and you visit. In Latin America, you're going to and it just depends on the family. You've got that extended family. The relationships are so important, and there aren't these defined lines between the nuclear family and then the aunts and uncles and the grandparents. It's the same in China. Family is extremely important, and we all just celebrated the Chinese New Year. And it's a time for families to get together, to eat, to talk, to plan ahead for the new year. And what you do, especially in cultures like in Asian cultures generally, because in China, you can't say one size fits all. In China, people in China are different. There are many different ethnicities, very many different ways that people behave and believe. But in when you have these collective, these close-knit societies, what you do, what I say and what I do, and who I am, such as if I'm a professor or an attorney or a businesswoman, that will bring pride on the family, or it could bring shame on the family. And in the US, we're more individualistic. If one person in the family misbehaves, that doesn't bring shame to the entire family unit. So what's really important as business leaders, we need to learn more about the cultural aspects of the values, the beliefs, and the attitudes, everything that's below the waterline. We don't need to know all of the specific norms, the rules of behaving in any given culture. But the more that we learn, the more we're able to adapt. It's critical, because if I could just go back to this slide, you know, it's great to have all of this analytical data. Fantastic. But look, it's the humans, and I like to point this out to my execs, my students, it's the humans who have to program the computers and you know, the data applications to function. They don't create themselves. And the artificial intelligence, all of these amazing technological futuristic functions of business don't have empathy. And if we think about emotional intelligence, you know, this is how to improve your EQ, your emotional intelligence. These machines cannot develop self-awareness, social awareness. They cannot do self-management or relationship management. And as we begin to interact more and more and more and more in this complex world of 8 billion people, where we're speaking different languages and we're interacting with different cultures that inform our behavior and cultures that are shifting. If we can't do that, and I'll come back to this, I'll give you these slides so everyone can look at them later. But, you know, what are the triggers that get us frustrated or impatient with somebody else? What are the work habits of someone in India as opposed to someone in the US? I recently, in my the second edition of my book, it's just come out. I don't know if I'm holding this up. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the second edition on communication, intercultural communication for the global leader. I teach about leadership through communication. And what's interesting, the editing of this book was sent out to an organization in India, okay? And there was a lot of frustration back and forth in terms of, what does a time commitment mean? How is that defined in the US? How is that defined in the UK? Because the publisher is Routledge from the UK. And how is that interpreted by the Indian counterparts? And there can also be an assumption. British English, US American English, and the English that people in India learned. And there were huge differences. So all of these things come into play when we are trying to develop our global leadership competencies. I'll stop there. I have so much more to say, but I'll stop there.
So one thing, perhaps you said something about adapting. So for example, now we have also Ulo Dolapo. I think he is in Lagos Business School, but living in UK. Is that right? In London, or where are you living? Check. If he has a speaker.
I'm in Nigeria at the moment. Hello.
You are in Nigeria. Okay. But Elizabeth, so what would you say for somebody coming from Nigeria, getting to India, for example, or China. I mean, you have experience with China. You said mostly China, United States, and Latin America. So how could he make contacts? How could he, or what kind of skills does he needs to develop? So how easy is it to get to know locals? So how easy is it to perhaps to get invited to a family dinner? I said this because I'm now 3 weeks in Mexico, and I was 2 times invited with a colleague from the school, and in Germany this never happens, and I'm only 2 weeks here in Mexico. So perhaps you can. We have students here, and perhaps we know that a lot of people from India, they would also like to go for Europe or to United States. Perhaps the working environment is better, or there are opportunities. But what would you like to tell them when you are going to United States? What do you need to learn, relearn? How to connect with people? So make it as practical as possible by your own story. So what did you need to do in China, and how you yourself needed to adapt in this?
Oh my goodness! Do you have like 2 days?
Okay, no, but only just limited for these examples.
Yes.
Yeah, so
let me ask how your student.
Yes.
How do you pronounce your name? Oludalapo, or is it Ojalabi? What is your name?
So my first name is Olu Dolapo. Surname is Ojo.
Oludolapo. Okay.
Yes.
Well, let me respond this way. What would you, Oludolapo, what would you like to learn about if you were going to live or do business, or briefly or live while working in China or the US? What would you like to learn? What do you need to learn?
Well, the primary information I would need to learn would be whatever helps me succeed on my assignment there. So I would want to understand the culture, how to communicate effectively with my new environment. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, anything that supports my success.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that, Oludolapo. I had, as much as my area of expertise is in intercultural communication, I've researched it, written about it, lectured on it, lived it. Every day is a learning experience. And I made so many mistakes because I'll talk about cultural intelligence briefly, but remember, my behavior is all informed by my attitudes, what I think about things, by the beliefs, what's right, what's wrong, by my values. What are those core aspects of who I am? And my parents, without even saying a word, taught us to be kind, compassionate, humble, and generous. So that's how I live. That's my core values of who I am: kind, compassionate, humble, and generous. But there were many times I didn't feel kind or compassionate because as I tried to learn Chinese, very difficult language, very difficult to communicate. And what we need to realize in China is very indirect, but at times they can be very direct. For example, a friend or a colleague could say to me, after they get to know me, they could say, "Did you gain weight? Or did you lose weight? Or why did you cut your hair that way?" We would never do that in the US. And I can learn about China, about them being about Chinese generally being very respectful, very indirect. But then there's this paradox that all of a sudden someone's telling me, and one of my best friends in Hong Kong started criticizing me. "Elizabeth, you're a professor. You've got to fix your hair and do your nails and wear different clothes. You won't be respected." And that was her way of showing me that now I'm in her family. I'm in her in group, that circle of friends, and she is bound to me forever because we have that guanxi, that interconnectedness. But I had to learn that most people, for example, in the workplace, if my boss said, I want you to do this project, he would expect me to know what he means. So it was my job to figure it out and then go to other people to ask them, what does my boss, the boss way up here with the power, what do I need to figure out in order to do this project? And I didn't know that. When I moved to Hong Kong, I did not know that. And so I kind of waited and waited and waited for my boss to say, okay, you know, here are the general guidelines, do it. But I was new to the culture. I was new to the department. And he got really angry at me because I failed. And he criticized me in private and said, you're from Wharton, the big business school. I'm disappointed. You should know that. So there are all these unexpected situations that happen. And so the more that we can learn that generally Chinese people will be indirect and they will expect you to get information, but also the people in your inner group will be very, very frank, very honest with you. So it's a challenge. If you were to go to China tomorrow, some of the things you would need to realize is, even though China is modernizing, and even if you live in a high-tech area like I did, people are very curious and they are going to stare at you, and they will not necessarily come up to you and say hello. But if you smile and try to speak a little bit of their language, even if you say ni hao, you are going to begin to develop a friendship, because Chinese people in general, and it depends, if they've been educated in the West, they will be more open. But you're going to find that even in large, high-tech areas of the city, people are very curious. And every day I went out of my apartment, and when I lived in Hong Kong, they would stare at me on the subway, but they wouldn't look at me, but I knew they were looking at me. You know, in Hong Kong, a very, very international city, they still were curious. And one of my colleagues, he was an African-American male, very tall, very distinguished looking. And people were very curious. They would stare at him just as much. So whether you are white or black or brown, people are curious, and you have to learn that it's not malicious. It's all friendly. And the minute you try to extend courtesy and smile, you make friends like that. It's complicated. I think that's what I'm trying to say, Professor. My message is complicated. And so, Oludalapo, you would just have to begin to learn about China. You would talk with Chinese people, and every person would tell you something different, because we can't say a one-size piece of clothing fit all. It's complicated, but it's exciting. It's a challenge. We make mistakes. But if we can learn, and I'll stop with this, if we can learn about cultural intelligence, that motivation, just like you said, Oludalapo, I want to learn. I need to learn something about China to be successful. And that starts with motivation, that you want to. And then the knowledge, you begin to learn. And we can't learn everything. Then we learn strategies. For example, when I go into a bank and I have to do something, and I go with a friend because my Chinese is not good enough to do banking. That's really high level. And the teller, the bank official tells my friend, my Chinese friend, oh, she needs her passport. Oh, so now I have to go back to my apartment and get my passport. And I have to take up more time of my friend. So we come back that same day with my passport. Oh, we need your job letter from the university to prove that you are allowed to be here. And I see Professor is nodding. And so, oh my gosh. So I asked my friend, can you come back with me tomorrow? Yes, I can. So we go back and I bring my job letter. But my job letter says, Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I'm getting all these signs showing up here. My job letter says, Elizabeth Tuleja, but my passport has all of my names, Elizabeth and Tuleja. And they say, no, you need the right letter with the exact name. And I'm pulling my hair out and I don't feel kind. I don't feel compassionate. I want to scream because they're wasting my time. But I have to learn. I have to learn the strategies for how to deal with these things. In the US, I don't need my passport. I just need an ID. A passport we only use when we travel. And so then I have to learn, based upon my motivation, my knowledge, those strategies, how to behave well. And I have to tell you, and I tell all of my clients, my execs, my EMBAs, my MBAs, my business students, undergrads, I make mistakes every day. But I learn from my mistakes, and that's what creates
and there I have a question.
Intelligence.
And there I have exactly a question. First of all, I also put out my identity card from Mexico because one person said, look, that the Jörg with a double point is there. Otherwise, you will get problems in the bank. That they said this is not your right name, and because another person had this with an Ü, and he said, and I double checked and said everything is fine. My name is written correct. So the same issue is also here in Mexico, that people then sometimes get a problem when not the whole name is inside. But this is also the part. The point is now, what I'm mostly interested is when somebody, and you mentioned it clearly with one or two examples of China, that you said, first of all, you get feedback when you belong perhaps to the family, that people tell you the truth, or that people tell you something which perhaps very directly, or you mentioned something that your boss did tell it to you face to face, so not in a group and losing face and because of the culture. But the point is, how did you find out that you made mistakes by body languages, by people? Because you mentioned communication. I mean, now I'm a German one, and some of the people have seen I have directly communicated in the WhatsApp. When you're not doing your parts till Sunday, you are out of the group. This was my last choice, because some people are not doing their parts, some others are waiting. This is a direct, and I also mentioned it, this is direct German. This is something like, other people, it's not good for other people to wait for you. They would like to move on in the program, but you need to do your parts. Otherwise, the whole process of whole people cannot move on. So this is, but I mentioned it directly, this is German, typically German. But how did you get to know that you made mistakes? Did people talk to you, or did you ask, oh, there was something strange in the room and people looked at me differently? So how did you get to know it, that it was a mistake?
I got to know this, great question, through mindfulness.
Okay, now we are at the topic. Okay, yes.
Do you want me to say more?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
please. No, so tell me something about the approach and what students can learn from your model here.
And you know what I can do? I can send you a book chapter. I wrote a book chapter in this book by a group of international experts on leadership. It's called Leadership by Design. And I talked about cultural intelligence. You need to first be willing to learn things about yourself that maybe you don't like. And I find that most business people they're like, don't tell me that. I'm a senior vice president. Or I've had so many students tell me, I actually had a student tell me one day, one of my executive MBAs at the University of Notre Dame said to me, we were doing an international project, and this was so rude. And he said to me, I see Rashid, I'm assuming you're from the region in Southeast Asia. Ritu, maybe you as well, I'm not sure. But I don't want to be derogatory, but the student said, this adult said, oh, I work with Indians all the time. They don't give me any problems. You know, and I just had to, as a professor, just say, well, if you have been so successful in your business across borders, how about you share with us what you've learned? And he couldn't. It was just this bragging. It was this us versus them. And it was very ethnocentric.
Yeah.
But you know what? He was not willing to learn. He wanted to seem, oh, like, you know, crossing his arms. I'm so good. But you know what? He wasn't willing to learn. But there are times I haven't been willing to learn, and that's about openness. And when I lived in Hong Kong, even though I was an intercultural communication expert, I was not always aware or willing or open to learning. Being willing and open and having that awareness will lead to mindfulness, because I made many mistakes and I was very blind in many ways. So I can't criticize that student.
Yeah.
Because I also, as a human being, was in his place. We all have these blind spots, as they call them. So I think the best thing to do is to not just read, or start to read, to gain that awareness and that knowledge. And then start to meet people and learn from them. And I would ask colleague after colleague after colleague, well, what do Hong Kong people usually do or say or think or feel? They would all say something different. So I had to take that information and kind of curate it. I had to figure out, okay, I need to be flexible. Like I'm not a good tennis player. But you know, if my one tennis instructor said, you know, get up and stand in the ready position and your feet are flexible and ready to move over here or ready to move over there. It's a lot of it. I just say mindfulness is that metacognition and that learning about who am I and what do I think and how do I feel. And if I can be willing to learn and be open, develop that awareness and that knowledge, that becomes awareness that leads to mindfulness. And then we're able to develop the competencies, the skills. If I had said to that student as his lecturer, wow, that was a really rude, inappropriate thing to say, he wasn't open, he wouldn't have learned. So I've had other situations like that where a student has said something and then the other people will say, what a stupid remark. And so it's more on that peer level. Just like my boss in Hong Kong, and he was a difficult boss. Everybody would come to me and say, oh my gosh, even the Hong Kong Chinese would ask me for advice. I'm like, I don't know. I'm the foreigner. I'm trying to learn myself. But you never criticize someone in a meeting. And so that he said that to me in private. I had failed. I didn't do what he expected me to do, but I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So what I should have done was, and I did, I started to ask people, but it was too late because I just thought, oh, if it's really important to him, he'll tell me. So
one thing, Elizabeth. So because we have different participants. Also now there's another professor. It's Conjo Vogel from Southern California. She's doing the session next week on Globe. But what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, you did some research on mindfulness. You did some research on cultural intelligence. Would you say that there are some countries where there is a higher level of cultural intelligence or a higher level of mindfulness because of the society? Or would you say it depends on the person and on the personality, and this is what they can reach? So because we have different participants and also people from Bahamas or from Germany that you said, German is a very integrated. So I mean, my city is global, international, Düsseldorf. It has an international airport, Chinese companies, Japanese companies, Spanish companies from France. So this is a very cosmopolitan city, I would say. No? It is not a big city, but would you say that, for example, somebody from Lagos here has less chances to develop cultural intelligence, or does it not care? It is more the person itself. So what would you say? Openness, you mentioned. So people with an open mind. I mean, this is more on a personality level, but perhaps you have more experiences.
Well, I think it all comes down to, I think the bottom line is human nature. And I don't know, that's a very interesting question, Professor, because I wonder if there are studies. But I would say, I think it's an individual, personal thing. And here are two examples. One, Europeans, I envy Europeans, because I would have loved to have grown up in proximity to so many different countries and to have learned multiple languages as a child. In the US, unfortunately, we don't do that. But I think when you have that ability to interact with different cultures, with different ways of life, with different languages, you develop the ability to style switch. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be mindful. We still have the human us versus them, that ethnocentrism. The French think they're better than the Germans. The Germans think they're better than the Italians. Northern Italians think they're better than Southern Italians. So I think, again, that's why I think the willingness to learn, the openness, and then developing that awareness that we need to be mindful is key. One could argue that in China, because Chinese people in general and the cultures, we can generalize. And if we look at Geert Hofstede, the Dutch social psychologist who came up with the idea of cultural dimensions, you know, we can measure societies and say, you know, there's this bell curve, and there is, you know, a majority of people who will have these characteristics, but then of course there are people who are outliers who don't, because we're not cookie cutters, we're human beings. But one could argue generally that Chinese people, because, or Japanese people, because, or other people from different Asian cultures, because there is that emphasis on harmony and the relationship, as well as reading between the lines, reading the subtext, that they're going to listen, they're going to be mindful, and they're going to understand. Now, yes, to a certain degree. However, what I have learned from living and working in mainland China and Hong Kong, and I have to be careful even how I frame that, because different people will say different things. So I like to say mainland China and Hong Kong, is that there is not necessarily an openness to learning about cultural intelligence. I have found a lot of, as we say, pushback, more so in mainland, 在大陆 in mainland, than in Hong Kong. However, in working with Japanese clients, there is, Japan and China are very different. But Japan and China, because of the background geographically and philosophically and historically, have more similarities than, say, they do to Germany or to Nigeria or to India or to the US. But I find that Japanese people, the clients I've worked with, are much more open to learning about intercultural communication and cultural intelligence than Chinese. That has been my experience. So I really think it's really individual, and it depends.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for answering this question. You have shown up some kind of a 4-field matrix where there was self-awareness, social awareness. I think I don't remember everything, but perhaps can you tell us a little bit about how much time does it take? How much effort does it take to get self-aware? I mean, you said something. I mean, some people might be self-aware because they also received a lot of feedback that they can say, okay, I'm not the hero of the world. I also make mistakes. I'm sometimes too direct. Sometimes I'm very emotionally upset in some other areas. I mean, this also takes time, and this also takes time of reflecting yourself in different situations. I mean, the point of self-management is about to observe yourself. Some people are doing it frequently, some other people never experience that. But how does it help to be self-aware in this global leadership job? How does it help to know a lot about relationship management? So about these 4 fields in improving your emotional intelligence, and how much effort do you need in order to do an introspection? I mean, you said some people we don't want to look at, or it feels pain when you get a mirror of some people, and especially in some regions of the world. Some people are more direct, like you said, like people from Netherlands or Germany. They would say to you directly, your performance is not good. And in some other areas, it is you cannot do it. It is a no-go because also that you don't get any trust. So tell us something about perhaps your clients. That you mentioned the term of ethnocentric, but how to change an ethnocentric person? I mean, motivation is a trigger you mentioned, but some people take more time, some people take less time. Yeah, perhaps you can show us a little bit the box of your experience.
Sure. I think your first question was, how long does this take? And it takes a lifetime of trial and error. I just recently developed with a team, it was a team of 3 of us. I work with 2 statisticians from one of my organizations called the Hofstede Insights Institute. And here at Hofstede, the Dutch interculturalist, he had was a psychologist working with IBM, and he had all this data, and he gleaned, he found themes from over 100,000 employees of IBM working around the world, cultural data. And so, he created this whole field of intercultural management and how we can learn. So there are certain differences, there are certain similarities, but it takes a lifetime. And I think that, again, it begins with, are we willing to be introspective? Are we open to receiving criticism and feedback? And some of us have more of a tendency, a proclivity, an interest in being self-aware. For me, I had to develop this in later in life. Right now, I am working with a Chinese educational group, coaching high school students as they prepare for college entrance exams. And so they are really lucky at a very young age to receive this type of training. So it's something that first we have to become aware that it exists, and second, just start to monitor ourselves. And this is what I do with my executive coaching of clients around the world, is just talking about these issues. And I believe in coaching. I have 2 or 3 coaches who work with me. And we talk about these issues. Coaching isn't just talking, it's about discovery and about learning about myself. I have grown so much over the years because other people are sharpening my skills and bringing out things that I'm not even aware of. And that self-awareness of learning about who am I, with this tool, I'm sorry, I started to say, with the Hofstede Insights Group, I work with 2 statisticians, brilliant colleagues, and they did the quantitative side, I did the qualitative side, and we created something called the CAP, think of a cap, a hat, the cultural adaptability profile. And we linked culture with psychology. And so and this assessment shows your the likelihood of how well, based upon your personality, you will thrive or struggle to survive in a foreign setting. And one of the things that I learned about myself, and I have no problem sharing my weaknesses, because we all have them. Yeah. And I become that, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to say to my boss or doing, just like interacting. Sometimes you have to have this power, and you don't interact with clients or your employees on a more egalitarian level. We all have different styles, and they're different contexts. But one of the things I like to share as I'm talking is not just, oh, I do great with this and I do great with that. I mean, people think, oh, she wrote this book, she knows everything. I'm a human being. Yeah. And I do things really, I'm great at adapting to ambiguity. I am great at communicating and interacting with people, but I also fail because I may not be thinking about that social awareness and what should I do in this situation, because maybe I'm tired, I am stressed. But one of the things I've learned from the cultural adaptability profile through the Hofstede Insights group is that one of the personality factors is about emotional resilience. And I find that with my personality, at the bank, I get very emotional. So that doesn't mean that I can't adapt to stress or all sorts of things. I'm very good at that, but I have to manage my emotions, manage myself, that self-management. So when I go into the bank, rather than say, Weishima, I don't understand. Why are you doing this to me? I can just say, okay, turn to my colleague who is helping me and say, what do I need to do next? And then let me ask 2 or 3 steps ahead. What do I need in order to be successful? As Olu Dalapo was asking, how do I be successful? Okay, how do I, it's not just get this one thing. Now I know, okay, are there other documents I need? So I take that, and then when I went with a colleague to renew my visa at the special government office, I made a list. What are the things that I need to do? When do I need them? How do I get them? And so I'm able to manage those relationships, and it went so smoothly. It still was frustrating. It still took time. I still wanted to pull my hair out because of the procedure, the bureaucracy. Yeah. But I managed the relationships better, and I managed myself better.
But I mean, you also said it is a learning process. No? When I'm listening to it, like to self-regulate or getting more emotional resilient, you said. But how to train it? How I mean, okay, you get some feedback from others, but I mean, emotions to change emotions takes more time than to change the thinking. No, we all know it. No, for example, when you have a destroyed relationship, you know that you're thinking half a year or longer about the person, but the mindset, why I could choose another one, no? But the emotions are differently. Mm-hmm. And, no, I mean, and this is the case. And what I also said in one of our last sessions here is that emotions are like quicksand. You more you would get rid of them, you more you're going into this area.
The more you struggle to get out. Yeah.
But how to find a way of saying the situation is bad, but I'm not out of control. I can still regulate myself. I can breathe, or I can do some other parts, but how long is it implementing? So that somebody gets to know, okay, in this situation, it's better not to be loud. Or, I mean, you will have the situation when you're doing cross-cultural work. No? I mean, you must look sometimes not to be too direct or anything, but how long will this take about?
Forever. You know, this applies to our relationships with our partners, spouses, children, family members, siblings. So it's constant. And it's not just cross-cultural, you know, it's within our families. It's within working with other people who are from the same, you know, city, but they're all going to be different. They could have different religions or philosophical beliefs. They, you know, it's just, this is why businesses fail. This is why employees leave their business because they don't like their boss doesn't treat them well or with respect. And this is why cross-border mergers don't work, because everybody is operating on their own mindset. So all I can say, it's a daily learning about yourself to improve. We should be learning these things as children. So, and that's why we have coaches. I was talking with a client just yesterday, and the client said, we talked about a situation that was an unpleasant situation in the office. And my client, I said, so what did you learn about that? And she said what she thought about it. And she didn't really realize that what she thinks about and her actual behavior totally are different. And so I said, what do you notice about what you think? And you know, I let her, you know, just expound on that. Now, what did you notice about what happened, what you explained to me in the situation? And that light went off. Oh my gosh, I'm saying that I should do this, but here I did this. And you know, that seems obvious, but often the most obvious things we're just not aware of.
Okay, but what would you recommend of how to reflect those situations, like with doing some sports or meditation or yoga? I mean, we have some people from India here in the group. So what would you say in order to recognize, or in order that you are still motivated to learn? I mean, some people would say, hey, I learned my whole life, now it's finished, but we all know it is a lifetime journey. But what would you recommend to do in this specific situation?
Well, what I would do is just looking at the CQ knowledge or the EQ knowledge. So you can go back and read that short little thing about self-management and relationship management. You can think about, you know, what is the knowledge I need to build around myself or other people, whether they are like me or not. And then I think the strategy, it depends on everybody. If somebody wants to do yoga, do yoga. You know what I do? I walk. Every day I walk about 8 kilometers. I live near 2 lakes, and that's one of my forms of exercise. And while I'm walking, sometimes I just totally stop thinking. Other times I meditate, or I pray, or I think about an issue. What could I do? How could I make things differently? What would be a strategy? And actually,
so your own coach. So you implement your own coach. What can I do in this specific situation?
Exactly. I'll send, before we end, I'll try to drop it if I can get to my document. After I finish sharing screen. I have that book chapter that talks about willingness, openness, and then being aware. And then I have this other thing, a really nice kind of handout from this very famous person, professor on mindfulness. And it just talks about, it's about somebody jogging for self-awareness and kind of the steps that they walk through as they're trying to think. And I have so many different types. If anyone wants to work with me and be coached, I have so many different types of exercises that help us understand what are my open areas that I share with people? What are my hidden areas that I keep back? What are the blind areas that I need feedback on? And what are the unknown things that I have yet to discover? So it's a learning process, and what your students should do is keep taking this class and keep being involved and learning about mindfulness in business, because unless we all work on that EQ and that CQ, we're holding ourselves back. And I wish I had learned this in graduate school. You know, I really wish I had somebody to teach me these things. I had to discover it on my own.
Okay, so Elizabeth, so perhaps we can take 20 more minutes or 15 more minutes, and especially if the students have for themselves a question, perhaps we can start with Ruth. So Ruth, is there anything which you perhaps would like to get to know from Elizabeth about perhaps some strategies, or about some difficulties, or about how to raise your self-awareness or emotional intelligence? Perhaps make it practitioner oriented, what you need. I mean, we have an expert right now. It's not a counseling, it is just a short question, but perhaps you have something to ask.
Have I stopped sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, please, Ruth.
Professor Elizabeth, it was a very interesting session, and I've learned a lot from you. Since you are an expert in communication, I would like to ask, what books would you like to recommend on communication?
Okay. I'm writing a note to myself.
Okay, do you have another question then, Ruth, or only this about the book?
Just about the book, but also I would love to be coached by Professor Elizabeth.
Okay.
If it's possible.
We'll talk about this. Yeah. I don't mean to be self-serving, Ruth, but I have to say I am so excited about the second edition of my book, because it's about communication and leadership. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually with my Intercultural Leader Institute, I'm developing an online course based upon this 8-chapter book, and I just walk students through from beginning to the end. And so I don't mean to be self-serving, but this is the only book of its kind. It's about communication helps leaders. It's not about leadership theories. It's about communication to help leaders. But what I can do, Ruth, and thank you for that question, I will send your professor a number of resources that I've already mentioned, and I can send some of the other books that I enjoy reading. I'm all about practicality. Everything I do is based on theory. And if you read that article on developing intercultural intelligence through mindfulness, it's all based upon research, but it's put into a very practical way. So I'd be happy to share some other things. Do you or any of the other participants have a specific area of the world that you want to learn about? Because I have books, many books on different parts of the world.
Yeah, perhaps
and
we can
websites.
Perhaps we can now ask Rito Bisht. So what question would you like to ask Elizabeth?
Yes, Professor. So as Ruth says, it was really very interesting session, and the way you explained things was very exciting and thrilling. I really enjoyed it. So it's not really a question, but as you said that you spent your time in China, right? Like you went there for work, and you explained the situation of your boss and the bank situation. So I just want to ask, like, if there are more situations where you face cross-cultural difficulties, issues when you first went there, like there was no one to help you, but still you had to deal with it on your own. So any situation on that and your reviews on that?
Oh my gosh. Do you have like forever? You know what's interesting? We all have our strengths and weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses is that that psychological term called emotional resilience. And I have emotional resilience because I was able to move to Hong Kong. I just got bored at Wharton. You know, it's a great school, but you know, it's just full of a bunch of ordinary people at a super school. Big deal, okay? And I just got bored. It's time to do something else. So I left a great career with great colleagues to move to a country where I didn't know anyone or the language. And so I was really resilient, and I had to deal with a lot. But what you have to do is create that in-group, find friends, find informants, people you get to know, whether it's a student or a colleague or like a fellow classmate or a colleague, and you just find somebody who can support you, and then you start asking them questions. For example, one of my mistakes was during a business meeting, our faculty meeting of the other people in our business management group, did something that I was not pleased about. It was a very contentious. It's a shame. It's a shame. When I left, the executive assistant said, "Elizabeth, you're the only woman, foreign woman who stayed more than 6 months." Because I wanted to succeed.
Yeah.
And I would have stayed, but my father became ill and I had to come back to the US. But I remember in that meeting, I was annoyed with her, and I criticized her. And I said, wait a minute, what do you mean? You're doing this when you said you wanted me to do that? And we had an exchange. The next thing I knew, she texted all of the business faculty, not even in our department, to shame me. And that was unusual. I asked my Chinese friends, oh my gosh, I've ruined my relationship with her and the boss and everyone. And my colleagues said, don't worry about it. It will all go away. But I was very upset that she had shamed me, and I didn't understand that. But my colleagues said that was unusual. We just have to move on. So I learned, Ritu, that you don't make a criticism in a meeting, because in the USA, I could say to my boss, Jim, wait a minute. You told me 2 weeks ago to do this. I started working on it, and now you're telling me my other colleague's doing it. Oh, I wish you had told me. And he would say, yeah, I should have. Sorry.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just put the wrong button, but now I'm back again. I was just for 20 seconds away. Yeah, Rachit Singh, perhaps you also have something to ask, and you can see all the experience and the adaptation herself. So there is not this one-size-fits-all strategy, and I mean, especially with emotional intelligence, emotional resilience. No? So she went out of her comfort zone. And this is visible. And yeah, perhaps you have your own question, Rachit. No? Perhaps
yes,
want to go
sir.
to Europe, or I don't know. But yes, please.
Actually, being an Indian, it's really difficult. And in the rest of the world, we have been known to be pavam. I guess you know this word pavam.
Say that again. I didn't hear that, Rachit.
Actually, that the word is pavam for Indians. We have this basically an ideology that we don't speak much in front of people. We try to understand them. And most of the time, we fail to do that. How can we tackle that thing?
Very, very good. Maybe somebody could type that word in the chat, paun. Is there a chat here?
Yeah, there's a chat here.
I don't see the chat. Where is the chat?
It's not working.
It's not working. Okay. Well, Rashid, thank you for that. And one of the things that really made me sad when I was a professor at the Wharton School and also the Mendoza College of Business at Notre Dame is that the US American students didn't realize that there were different ways of engaging as a team or in class, and the professors didn't realize this as well. And so I did a lot of advising for my international students, and the biggest issue they had was, on my team, people think I'm lazy, or we call a slacker, or I'm not doing the work, or I don't participate. Well, that's because an Indian student, a Chinese student, would listen out of respect and also wanting to be able to understand the context. And so it was very, very difficult for international students. And I would always do the international student orientation to teach about the US American way. And I hope you notice I'm saying US American because North America includes Canada, the USA, and Mexico. So I'm trying to not be ethnocentric. So it's difficult, but a strategy, Rashid, is yes, you have your cultural practice, but a strategy when you're working with people from Western cultures is to speak up. Just like a strategy with a Westerner living in Hong Kong is to not speak up in a meeting. I had to learn because just my emotional, what? Oh my gosh, I spent all this time working on this. Yeah, I could do that to my boss because we have more egalitarian relationships.
But how, Elizabeth, how did you regulate yourself not to speak up in China? That you said now it's more important to listen, and perhaps the body said I would like to explode and to tell my point of view, but now I'm not allowed, and I need to be quiet, and I need to self-regulate. I need to go out of the room, perhaps to take a walk, or so. How did you, and how long does it take to regulate yourself in these situations?
Every situation, every context is different. So you're constantly style shifting, just like that tennis player pivoting. Let me give you a really funny example. We used to have meetings every Friday at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So that would be what, in terms of 2300? Is that it? 2300?
Yes.
On a Friday afternoon, 2-hour-long meetings. It was exhausting. And I would want to participate. But finally, one of my Hong Kong Chinese colleagues said, Elizabeth, these meetings are not about us. Even when the director asks for our input, it's not about us. It's about him. And it's about him talking. And here is a mistake I made. One of my Chinese colleagues came to me and said, Elizabeth, you are that outspoken US American, that Westerner. We have this problem, and we would like you to say something in the meeting. And they explained the problem. I forget what it was. And so I said to them, okay, I can speak up on your behalf, but will you support me? Oh, yeah. Professor knows what's going to happen. If I could see your faces, some of you know what's going to happen. So during the meeting, at one point, I said, we have a concern. My colleagues have a concern. And I mentioned it. And my professor was just, sitting there looking at everybody. And he said, all right, what do you have to say? What do your colleagues have to say? And everybody immediately looked down. A few weeks later, they said, we have another problem. Can you bring this up? And I said, are you going to back me up? Oh, yeah. And I thought, okay, maybe this time they will. Maybe they were just uncomfortable, but they saw nothing happened. And so I said something. And the director looked at everybody. What do you have to say? Okay, so the third time they asked me, I said no. So what I learned was that I should have gone to him privately and spoken to him privately. It's so hard. So Rashid, sometimes we have to move outside of that comfort zone and speak up. Other times we have to learn to be quiet.
So you learned from this context that 2 times they mention it, and then nobody raised their head. I know it also from Chinese in my class, that when I have a question, 30 heads go down, nobody's willing to answer. And it is a phenomenon. But what did you do after the second session? Then perhaps you went out and you said, hey, strange behavior. And how did you get to know that it is better now to talk to the person individually? So did anybody, so how did you learn from it? I mean, you have experienced it 2 times and you said, okay, 2 times is representative that it is strange. And now I need to take a different strategy.
You know, I had not yet developed trust. I think you had talked about that topic of trust.
Yeah.
I had not yet developed trust. And my colleagues, my Chinese colleagues, thought that the professor and I, like I was, or the director, I was supporting them, and I was one of them because I was hired as a senior professor. And so they didn't trust me. And it wasn't until one day after one of those meetings, not where I raised an issue, when we came out of that meeting, I said something. It was a 3-hour meeting on a Friday afternoon. I said, you know, I am so tired of these unproductive meetings. What do they want? They're wasting our time. And one of the women said to me, I thought you were one of them. I thought you were part of the leadership team. And I thought you liked everything they do, because I'm positive, I'm trying to be, you know, accommodating. And she said, we're going to eat dinner, come with us. So they invited me in when they realized that I was one of them. And so I started asking them, what should I do? And they gave me advice. I also asked my colleague, she was US American, but also Australian. She had immigrated to Australia. And I asked her because she was older and wiser. And so she gave me feedback. So it's all about finding your informants, finding your inner circle, and just every situation is different. I once was put in charge of creating this weekend conference or this workshop on what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
And Kitty, one of the young lecturers from Hong Kong, I and the Australian US American woman, we were working on this together. We divided our projects, and I was like, okay, or she was in charge. So she said, Elizabeth, her name was Elizabeth too. Elizabeth 1 said to Elizabeth 2, me, do this. She'll do that. And Kitty, I want you to do this. So in the US, in Australia, we just expect, okay, we make all of the instructions, I'll do this, and we expect that we have dialogue if someone doesn't understand. However, 2 days before this workshop, we had a meeting, and Elizabeth 1 asked me, Elizabeth 2 and Kitty, okay, how are things going? And Kitty said, I'm not going to do it. And we looked at her incredulously. We were surprised. What? And she said, I'm not going to do it. And she just got up and walked out of the meeting. Now, for a junior person to say that to a senior person, and then the senior person, that's unheard of. We would talk about it, but she didn't want to talk about it and left. And so Elizabeth 1 and I had to figure out how to do this together. And later I understood that I should be checking on Kitty and making sure that all along she felt supported, because she did not want to lose face.
Yes.
And make a mistake in front of the director. So, you know, it's just you live and you learn.
Yeah, thank you very much. Perhaps Olodulapo, do you have a final question? And then perhaps also Georgine, Georgine, perhaps just can also say the last words. So she's going to have the session next week. But perhaps Olodulapo, do you have any more questions to her, to Professor Elizabeth? Seems not. Yes, please. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Now it's Georgine.
Oh, okay. Great. Very, very interesting, Elizabeth and Dr. Shuey. I'm fascinated by all the examples and the books and your
Yeah,
real life.
can you switch on the camera also, Georgine, if
So
possible?
my background, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Maybe I put my microphone loud.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, I very much involved with coaching. So this was fascinating how you connect the intercultural skills with mindfulness and the
We're missing you, Young Yi. We can't hear you. You're cutting in and out.
okay. Let me. I think my audio. Let me try to. Maybe someone else can ask a question in the meantime.
Yeah, just waiting for Georgine for the next week, but I also liked it very much. No, I was trying always to put in some examples for the students, but I mean, you have a rich experience, and also I think the message was also good that it is a lifelong learning process, that we cannot get familiar with each other cultures. We only need to be looking in the situation, the context, and to read perhaps signals out of the context and to find a way of learning from it, or to be with the senses there, and perhaps the main message was also start early in developing emotional intelligence. And because this is necessary and this is what everybody needs, and perhaps it's a good time for students to think about it or to read something. So I also like that you perhaps can give some papers for the students afterwards, that they can get familiar. So
and my book is online. You can purchase the book online.
Yeah.
There's a 20%.
Book is online. Yeah.
So
this is perhaps a good thing. Just wait till she's coming back, but we are mostly finished. Yeah, any question from the students on the platform or on the program? So next week, like I said, is Georgine, perhaps when she's back in a couple of seconds or minutes. Is there anything you would like to ask? Or perhaps Oludolopa is perhaps back again, I don't know. Okay, I think Georgine is coming back. Yeah, Georgine, can you listen to me?
Yes.
Now it's better. Now it's better.
Okay. I think I had an interference there. So I was just saying that I work with executives as well, and the way how you can help them to develop that emotional resilience, because some of your examples in the corporate world, meetings and so forth, the way how culture does affect our relationships and the way how we approach different hierarchical situations, and whether we speak up or when we speak up, and even the role of women. I love the idea when you mentioned that in the Chinese meeting, obviously developing trust, it takes time, and they already have perceptions. And each culture has their own customs, and sometimes in the United States now we are talking about people having biases, but actually what does it mean? We have our own upbringing and all cultural values. So when we go overseas or we work with other people, we have to keep that in mind. And so it's always the self-reflection and working on it in terms of understanding the situation, the other people, the social differences, the cultural differences, and taking that mindfulness, as you mentioned, rather than judging or making decisions without consideration of all those other factors. And I just love the practicality of what you have
Great,
in
great.
terms of helping people develop these skills. And so it is so important in today's world, especially. And I don't know if you heard me when I said that I do coaching also, and use positive psychology and emotional intelligence
Good.
and mindfulness. And yeah, so I think it's all connected in terms of how we understand cultural differences and how we change people. But people have to change themselves. We cannot change them. So
Exactly.
the way how we can help them is to discover themselves and the environment around us. So I think it's just wonderful, and I'm so glad that you shared this, and I look forward to maybe reaching out on LinkedIn or just connecting.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I invite everyone. Check out my LinkedIn. This month, I'm doing posts. Every day I'm posting something. But I also have a blog where I write articles, but I'm writing short things. And so go to my website. The blogs are on my website as well. And there are learning materials there. And you know, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's stay in touch. So many exciting things. I even have a very, very inexpensive, if you don't want to buy the book, because the book is expensive. I have no control over it. I begged the publisher, please make it less expensive. But I have a 30-page ebook if you go to my website. And it's very, very inexpensive, and you could purchase it there. But I also have a very short self-study, it's asynchronous learning course on cultural intelligence. And it's also very inexpensive. So if you want more, you can go there. And I will put together, I'm writing all sorts of notes. That's why I'm looking down, looking over here. And we'll have to talk about the upcoming, is the upcoming class the same as this group, or that's the executive?
No. So the executive program will start next Friday. Okay. So it is Fridays. And perhaps a session of cultural intelligence is then in 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the first session, but I will tell you exactly when. No.
What about for this class? What about for this group? Do you want me back? Because there's so many things I could share. I don't want to just
yes. So I can ask you about some of the next classes. Global talent management. I think we have still. So the next 2 to 3 weeks are already professors, but we can speak it up also in the chat or via WhatsApp, and then we can do this.
Yeah, please do, because I don't want to just send a lot of things, but I'm thinking. Is it Professor Konyu Fogel?
Yeah, Georgine. She's Hungarian, but lived 20 years in the US. How long?
Yeah, more actually.
Wow.
I came when I was young, but I studied before I came to the US. I was in England studying in Cambridge and Bournemouth, and I also speak German because my profession was international trade, international business. So I got to be able to work with different people, clients, and then eventually I came to the US. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to connect on LinkedIn, and I would love to talk about some of my materials I've developed on coaching with mindfulness coaching. So there's so many things I would love to be able to meet, actually see the faces of Ruth and Ritu and Rashid and Oludalapo and Melanie, and interact with you some more. So I'm available. Let me know. I just don't want to keep throwing stuff at you. I have so many resources. Yeah. It can get overwhelming. So I'll curate a few, and I'll send them so you can send them to your students. And let me know if you want me to come back. I'd be happy to chat again.
Yeah, thank you very much also for this offer. So I'm going to look and where it fits perhaps the next week.
Great.
For sure in the executive program. I think you did it very practitioner oriented. Also the students liked it. Ruth is, for example, said she might be interested in coaching from you. So perhaps there are some more, but the executive program should have coaching also included, and this could be a good deal for all of us, and to arrange it. And I mean, we will have, I've posted it in the group. We have HEC executive MBAs inside from Finland, and so we have very good students right now, wanting to take part from Lagos Business School as well. And but the students program, I think it is good that they learn a little bit about what is their journey, and you explained it very well. It's nothing like to learn overnight. It is a lifelong journey, and this is what they need to take into consideration. So
and we learn from each other every day.
From each other,
learning
always.
Yeah. And you know, just my comment to all of you as students. You know what is so wonderful about going through a cohort, a group? You will make friends with different people in your cohort, in your group. For example, I still keep in touch with so many of my students, and I used to take my MBA students from the University of Notre Dame to China to teach them about doing business in China, and we did all of the society and culture and politics and history. And I've just been back and forth through LinkedIn, and that's how Professor and I got connected. But there's about 6 young men, you know, like 12 years ago, and I found this picture that we had taken at the Forbidden City in Beijing, and it was just I texted them all on LinkedIn, and they're, you know, telling me about their lives and their families and what they're doing and their jobs. You have such a unique experience because it's an international group, and I hope that you will make those connections and stay in touch with people in your in-group, you know, the people that you have that affinity, that the familiarity, the similarities, because it's an amazing world out there. It really is. And I just think more professors need to do this. Good for you, Professor Huby.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You are doing something so important that most schools are not doing. So all of you students, you are getting your money's worth, or as we say, the bang for the buck.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Georgine, would you like to add anything? Otherwise, I'm closing for next week.
Yeah, we need to go. I need to go.
Georgine, anything to add for next week? No. Or?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. So
I sent you
the recorded. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Take care. Be safe. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.